Our phones have been made intentionally addictive using powerful psychological techniques. It's not an accident that we're addicted to our phones.
They've hacked our psychology, essentially. They know what's going to keep you engaged. And Gen Z basically was the first generation, our generation, to grow up with social media.
The thing that people ask the AI coach too is, what do I do with all my free time? Like, people literally don't know what to do. And so I think people need to sacrifice for their life's mission, but not necessarily just to get another number in their bank account. What you gotta do is you gotta find someone early on that you're at like the same level with, and just learn with each other. Share everything that you can.
Do you have a round table? I was like, what do you mean? Like, just so we can see each other and talk? He's like, I'm not going unless they have a round table.
We're not sitting at a rectangle.
Welcome to Down to Earth. My name is Red Young. I'm here with brothers Jack and Charles Winston, the founders of BePresent, an app that is designed to keep you off of your phone and get you back engaged with the world, doing the things you love with the people you love. Jack and Charles, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having us, man. This is awesome. It's good to see you, by the way.
Yeah, it's great to see you guys. It's been awesome to see you guys growing as entrepreneurs as well, and just see you guys all over the different platforms doing your thing.
Same with you, man. It's awesome. I love like meeting people in the space and then just following them over months and months and seeing everyone's progress. So it's been awesome.
And it's crazy how fast some of us can grow now. Like the way business is going, like we were talking before the mics came on, that business and entrepreneurship now is totally different than it used to be. It's a lot of media. It's a lot of
social media. It's a lot of social media.
It's a lot of taking risks. But that's the way to do it now. And you can see a lot of this growth happening really quickly. So let's talk about that. Like, what was the vision for the brand? What was the original idea, and how did it come to life from concept to execution?
Well, I mean, the concept on the idea was, how we got to it in the first place was me and Charles. Like, we've struggled with our relationship with our phones for a long, long time. And so one of the most transformational experiences of our lives was breaking our phone addiction. When we developed a healthy relationship with our phone, it was kind of like the keystone habit that unlocked all of their habits in our lives. I felt like our social connections deepened, our anxiety melted away, my productivity increased, mental clarity increased. It's why I'm an entrepreneur in the first place. It really was the most transformational experience of our lives. And so we found that that's something that we struggle with, but we all struggle with it, right? Like, I'm sure that you struggle with it, especially as a content creator. I've made content on TikTok. Like, some of my least productive weeks are when I'm creating content on TikTok, because that's when I'm still get sucked into it. But
it's
really,
easy to backslide.
It's easy.
So easy.
It's something we all struggle with, and I think we recognize how big of a problem it is in our lives, because we all are trying to solve it, but it's so hard. I mean, probably setting those time limits, you just ignore them most of the time. We've done that a million times, right? And that's because our phones have been made intentionally addictive using powerful psychological techniques. It's not an accident that we're addicted to our phones. And so like the idea, the concept behind BePresent at first was, instead of just making another app locker that you disable or time limit that you ignore, or like deleting social media apps that you just re-download the next day, we were actually going to fight fire with fire using those same psychological techniques that social media companies use to keep us addicted, but to keep you off your phone. Kind of like replacing that dopamine hit from scrolling with dopamine for reducing your screen time. And so that was like the initial inspiration, like using behavior change to actually change your behavior, because it's a true behavioral addiction. And we don't think, tech is evil. I think like we were talking to, and we'll get to this, but it's enabled an explosion of entrepreneurship, allowing people like you and us and so many people, teams of 1, 2, 3, to build products and reach audiences of millions of people, and that's a beautiful thing. But we all have to learn how to develop a healthy relationship with technology, and I think going forward, it's just going to be more and more important for people to do so.
So what's the problem at the center of this? Like, what's the problem, call it out, that you guys are trying to solve?
Phone addiction, like the addiction to our phones, technology in general. And I think the biggest thing that people don't understand is that they blame themselves when they're addicted to technology or their phones, but it's not an accident. Like, our phones have been made intentionally addictive using powerful psychological techniques because these are the most powerful
They've hacked our psychology, essentially. They know what's going to keep you engaged and keep you on the app for as long as possible, and they optimize. There's just algorithms, machine learning, artificial intelligence. They get so much data on you, and they understand. You get an algorithm on TikTok, essentially, and they know exactly what kind of content is just going to scratch that itch for you because they have the data of like what you see and how long you spend on that video. And they'll just keep optimizing that and optimizing it more and more and more and more.
And here's the facts. Like, they've productized like psychological insights that have been around, since the 50s. Like, research, understanding how people respond. Like, they understand that like enraging content gets people more engaged, right? That's something that was around before social media. They understand that the idea, as humans, we all want social validation. So putting a like button made sense because humans want to project social status. And so it's all these like psychological insights about human nature that they just taken and put into a product to keep us constantly engaged, because every free moment that we have, every free moment that we're spending with our friends or with our families or having fun or in line at the grocery store is another free moment that they could be serving us an ad.
Because we are the product.
We are the product, exactly. Think about the business model. What metric are they optimizing for?
Attention.
Exactly. And so they just want more and more and more of your attention.
And it's a bottomless pit. I mean,
it's a bottomless pit. They're coming for every last free moment of your life.
And they're smart.
They want that.
They got the smartest people, way smarter than us, and then they're, just all they're doing is trying to optimize that.
So we have to fight back with psychology. Where our self-control is really, for most people, no match for these algorithms, especially when you need to have your phone on you, essentially all the time. So it's always there beckoning you. And so that's why we built BePresent, because we think you need more than just, I'm going to not use my phone, because that doesn't work.
You need to be incentivized to get back out there and do stuff. So I think it's so interesting. And I want you guys to explain like how the app works. I think it's so interesting that you guys have like ClassPass as one of the rewards there, like things that require you to do something with your free time.
Well, we found that like there's so many strategies. Like, first I want to say, like, it's not all doom and gloom. Like, these platforms like TikTok and Instagram, whatever, are powerful, but they're not all powerful. Like, you can enact strategies to actually develop a healthy relationship with technology. And we found like one of the most long-lasting things that you can do is actually fill that time up with something else. Like, we have, tens of thousands of users, and we talk to people, they reduce their screen time by, 3, 4, 5 hours a day. And then the big question is like, what do I do with this time? Like, what do I do? And we have some interesting like AI coaching features that we're just beta testing. And the thing that people ask the AI coach to is, what do I do with all my free time? Like, people literally don't know what to do. And so within our app,
it sounds funny, but I mean,
it's sad. And honestly, like,
because they've grown up like this too. I mean, Gen Z basically was the first generation, our generation, to grow up with social media on your phone. So when you develop like that, that fills your brain.
It fills your time.
It fills your time, and that's just what you know.
Especially during the most formative years.
Yeah.
And so the point with ClassPass, like, we have discounted therapy. The whole point is we give you rewards within our app, as well as other stuff, for things that improve your life. So that can be therapy, that can be discounted therapy, that can be discounted ClassPass, that can be, other, like, discounted for Whoop. Other like health and wellness, products. And so the whole point is you need to take this time that you save and actually follow your dreams or improve your life in some way. Do something like meaningful. I think that's just so important for people right now.
I think that's the thing that especially Gen Z is lacking, is like some kind of purpose, something to do. Because it can feel like there's like not much to do outside of consume. And we've been trained to just
consume,
take in rather than create and explore and experience, really. Like, that's what we're supposed to do as humans, and that was the default. Like I was just reading On the Road by Jack Kerouac.
Oh, I love that book. Yeah.
So these guys are just going all over the country with no aim. They're just experiencing and just doing stuff for the sake of doing it and meeting other people and like building stuff, building relationships. And that was the default of humans. That was like really a privilege to be able to do something like that.
Yeah.
And now we don't really have, I guess, the desire to do that, especially as a generation, I guess, to just experience that way.
Yeah.
And it's a skill that you have to learn and be taught. And when you're like first getting off of it, when you're like taking off the glasses or like coming out of the tunnel for the first time and it's all bright, it's like, what do I do? And it's like, just live, just follow,
be present.
follow. Yeah, there you go, man. Every moment is just like, there's not always an answer. It's like, well, if you just sit there and find it, like it'll come to you.
And here's another thing, like we're in a mental health crisis right now. And so a lot of people, when they experience anxiety, depression, all this kind of stuff, it's easy to just use the phone and use social media as a mask for that. And so when you take off the glasses, maybe there's a lot of like stuff that you have to face and deal with that you just don't want to.
Yeah.
And it's very uncomfortable.
It's a lot of coping.
Yeah.
And to a point on that too, like I'll take it one step further. People don't wander in the real world anymore. People's minds, they don't let their mind wander.
Yeah,
you know, they
right.
don't, every free moment they have, they're like mindlessly stimulating themselves. And it really is in these periods outside of the dopamine response feedback loop where you really understand who you are as a person and you know, get to feel these feelings like we're saying, like actually like experience them, understand like what you want, what you don't like what your purpose is in life. In people's minds, it's so important to let it wander, both just from a creative perspective, but also for self-regulation and mental health.
Yeah, actualizing yourself comes with reckoning with either your past or difficult thoughts. The word trauma is thrown around a lot. It's like, it doesn't even have to be that deep. Sometimes it's just like, what did I do yesterday that I should think about and reflect? People can't even remember what they had for breakfast. Like, you want to be able to reflect on who you are because that's all you really have is like your memories and your experiences.
Yeah, because if you're just always consuming, then who are you? Are you just a reflection of all of the content and everything you're just taking in? If you never like quiet that, then you don't have the chance to understand who you really are that's different from everything else in the world.
And I will say that's a big part of our entrepreneurial journey, me and Charles. Like, we had a lot of limiting beliefs about what we could and couldn't achieve. You know, we were at least me personally, I felt like I was very stuck in my life before I started this company and a job that, you know, I didn't like, honestly hated, was pretty miserable. The people were great, but
If you're watching.
I was not happy. And I had so many limiting beliefs about what I could do with my life. And it wasn't until I like really quieted my mind and took time to actually think about like what was possible and why I had these limiting beliefs. It's what allowed me to take steps to actually actualize these things that I had always kind of felt. But then I was like, society's telling me I can't do it, and so I never fully questioned it. But once I was really able to quiet my mind and listen to myself, like listen to my inner voice, it changed everything. And so that's why we're solving this problem in the first place. Like, I really, really believe that it's one of the defining problems of our generation for so many people.
I've seen you guys say that all the time, and I'm starting to see it more and more. And there's like huge groups that are advocating for tech wellness, I guess you call it. Like, what's the space that you guys would say you're in?
Yeah, it's still evolving. Like, the term that we use right now is digital wellness. You know, I truly believe that we're at the beginning of an inflection point, like this creation of an entire new category of health and wellness, and we call it digital wellness. I think it'll be right up there with fitness and nutrition and mental health and everything else, because how we interact online and digitally has a profound impact on, you know, our mental, physical, emotional, our spiritual health, how we interact as a society with other people. It really is, and it's where we spend most of our time. We're going to spend more and more time on it. And so I think in the future, we're all going to like track and optimize and think about like, what does it mean to be healthy digitally, the same way we think about being healthy in the physical world. And so we call that digital wellness. I think that's kind of the term that is going to stick.
What do you think the future will look like in terms of the digital world? I don't imagine smartphones being so present, maybe even in the next 10 years. What will that look like in terms of like the consumption and the integration of that tech in our lives?
It really will depend. Like, I don't claim to be like a huge futurist in terms of predicting the exact form factor, because you're basically asking a form factor question. Like, will it be goggles? Will it be like a phone? Will it be multiple things? Like
assistant or something?
It could be multiple things. The only thing that I'm 99.99999% sure of, it will be more time online than we spend right now. The trend is not going to stop. And
it's going up.
No, it's going up.
There's more? Is that possible?
Yes, 100%, dude. 100%. And here's the thing. I'm not necessarily saying that that's always a bad thing. Right now, it is a bad thing because online, what we do online is not beneficial to our health because it's a poor proxy for true human interaction. Like, social media is not social. But if there's a way, I think there's a world where how we interact online can actually be beneficial for us. And what we want to do, like, we're not anti-tech necessarily. Like, I'm anti-dystopian tech. And like, technology completely replacing creativity and social connection and like your relationships and all that stuff. I'm very anti that. But I'm not necessarily anti-blanketed more technology in our lives. But I think it's going up, and that's why it's even more important to figure out how do what we do online make us more human, not less. That's my personal point of view, though, on it.
Do you think there will be a kind of rift in terms of people who are super against tech or just really off the grid, so to speak, and then the people who are just like the masses who are just consuming tech more than ever? Or do you think there will be some kind of like homogenous way to live?
I think everybody pretty much gets it that we're essentially dependent on our tech, addicted to our tech. There's a spectrum of people believing, whether they're all the way on one side getting a flip phone and whatever going off grid, but everyone understands, like, I probably spend too much time on my phone. And so I don't think there's going to be a real divide. Every single person we talk to gets it immediately. When we tell them what we do, they're like, oh my God, I need that. And I think most people understand that they want to be spending more time in the real world. They want to be limiting the mindless use of technology, but they just don't know how.
The rift, I think, would only happen if we go down that dystopian route.
Right.
Like, I'm optimistic, and I think you are too in that vision. Like, I don't think the rift would only happen in a world where like the masses are controlled and like, more in a figurative sense, but like, yeah, it's like everyone is obese on screen time and stuff,
right.
like, But I personally think we're in a point in time, we didn't know what the heck we were doing when the smartphone was introduced in 2010, right? Like, we're at this inflection point. We have this massive reckoning. It's probably going to take even a couple more years. But I think after that, we're going to have to figure out how to live with it the same way that we live with like fast food existing. Or anything in life. And we're all going to have to figure out how does this improve the human experience, not detract from it. And of course, some people will be off grid. I think like that probably will get more prevalent than it is today, but I don't picture like a mass exodus unless it really gets so bad. But I think it honestly can be better than today.
Yeah, hopefully. I think that's what's interesting is that there's like the doomers and then the tech optimists.
Yeah, and we're not doomers. Like people always are like, oh, like you use your phone or like all this stuff. I'm like, our whole thing is that this has such a profound impact on our lives if it's used negatively. But like the idea of technology itself isn't negative. The idea of technology controlling you and replacing certain purely human qualities with like imperfect proxies of communication and connection and fulfillment, that's negative. But like it can be a facilitator in different ways of positive things.
So what's wrong with social media broadly, and let's specifically talk about like TikTok, like what's wrong with that and what could it look like if it were better or healthier for the users?
I mean, TikTok specifically, so there's a lot of different problems, but let's just talk about like the form factor. Very, very short videos, very, very quick. The only optimization that they have is let's inject as much dopamine into this person's brainstem as possible so that they keep staying on the app. The content that people are consuming there broadly is not the same content that actually fulfills you, like learning, right? So like one of the problems with TikTok is just, it's a bunch of short clips that are designed to keep you on for so long. It's like empty calories, right? Like
It's junk food.
The good
for your
analogy
brain.
is it's like you can eat 10 bags of chips and like, yes, you might feel like full, but you didn't actually get nutrition from there. And you kind of feel sick afterwards.
Yeah.
So, and again, like you can spend the same exact time reading on your iPad, like on the road, right? And that's screen time, that's digital, that's a positive thing in our lives. And so I think it's also somewhat of the lowest common denominator, that they're basically, the only thing they optimize for is dopamine hits in that scenario.
And it's not social in really any way outside of like seeing other
social
people.
media isn't social anymore, you know, not really. And like, and again, I actually like, I don't want to like say like some of the things that TikTok has allowed people to do isn't necessarily terrible.
And it's introduced, like I think social media has really helped make this health and wellness trend grow really rapidly in the last 5 years and get everyone, you know, aware that like you need to be taking care of your health in like every aspect of your life. And there's so many other types of niches that do help people through social media and all that kind of information. But yeah, the problem is what the platform optimizes. And they optimize for as much time you're going to spend paralyzed essentially on the device, just eyes glued to the phone. It's junk food for your brain. You know, have you ever been like in a doom scroll loop and you know you want to stop scrolling?
There's like a voice there, but then you're like
I'll just do one more, one more. You know you want to stop.
You're waiting for that good video.
It's a dopamine thing because they've overstimulated you with so much dopamine you don't have, and that's the motivator chemical. It's ruined your motivation to do almost anything else, and like even just getting out of bed comparatively seems borderline unbearable.
Yeah. It makes you only motivated to do more.
To do scroll,
Of that thing.
Once you elevate your
dopamine.
Yeah.
It's cheap dopamine.
But honestly, here's the nuance. I don't think TikTok, like no one should ever be on TikTok. Like people have cake sometimes. People sometimes go to McDonald's. Like the real problem, like it's the platforms and all this stuff, but it's also like a personal responsibility thing, and like the ability to have other tools and education and awareness around
To fight
it. Like,
back.
Yeah. And so like so many different industries make their products as addictive as possible, like McDonald's. Like they literally like engineer trying to make like the taste, like the taste explode in your mouth in a way that just makes you like love it as much as possible. And so that's still gonna exist. I mean, I think when you start getting into teenage and like, you know, middle school kids, that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
That's like developmental stuff.
Yeah,
Kids should not be on social media.
Yeah, they probably shouldn't be. But that's honestly like a whole other harder and easier problem to solve depending on how you look at it.
Right.
But yeah, like TikTok, like when you say what's the problem with it, like that's the problem that we said, but at the same time, like another end of the problem is that people just don't have the right tools, the right education, and the right mindset to actually like develop a healthy relationship with it. Because a lot of people, it's funny, a lot of our users, when we talk to our users every week, and we're just like, you know, ask some questions about the app, like how can we improve? And then we always ask like, why did you download this in the first place? Why are you trying to develop a healthy relationship with your phone? They usually say, I, you know, consider myself a very disciplined person. You know, I have a good relationship with alcohol. I work out a lot. I'm a med school student, or like, you know, I'm productive at work. The one vice that I have that I can't get rid of is my phone.
Right.
And so these people had to navigate other areas of addiction or like habits or vices in their life. And now they're trying to navigate this one. Everyone's going to go through that reckoning at some point. I think a lot of people in this particular moment that we're at, we signed up for this when we were kids. Like I got my iPhone when I was 14. Right? I had no idea what I was signing up for. And then for several years, I just had no idea. I just got more and more addicted, bad habit after bad habit after bad habit. And then it spiraled out of control, it snowballs, and it goes into adulthood, and then you have to reckon with it. Where when I was younger, I was always working out, playing sports, all this stuff, so I grew up with it.
Yeah.
And so I have a healthy relationship with that.
You're not even thinking about it.
Yeah, I mean, I do have to think about, there's the thing, we're all going to have to think about, we're all going to always struggle in some way.
Yeah.
Or at least like be mindful about it. But I think like it's not necessarily the answer is no TikTok or it's always bad. Of course, there can be changes with TikTok. Don't get me wrong, but it's about like it's broader than that. It's about how we interact with technology, the tools that we have, the awareness around it, our mindset. Like even understanding that it's unhealthy is important. Like that's like kind of the first step.
Yeah, awareness is the first step.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that really don't know it. Like there's some people that with certain kinds of food, it's like, how did you not know that this was bad for you? Like, haven't you heard like since kindergarten, like red 5, yellow 5, like that stuff's terrible for you, like dyes and stuff, but some people just don't know. I mean,
just don't know.
Literacy is super important.
And then they don't know how much time they're really spending on their phone either.
Oh yeah.
And like one of our consistently users say like one of their favorite features of our app, it's so simple. You simply get a notification every hour of screen time that you have, and it's like they say, "Oh my God, I didn't even know that I was 6 hours every single day." And just that reminder of like, "Oh, you're almost at 3 hours."
Yeah,
it gives you a nudge to be like, "Is this really what I want to be doing right now?"
Especially since you set your own limit on it. I think that's one of the things that really stands out of your app versus like Apple's like screen time thing, is that if you set your limit for 3 hours. And you're approaching the 3 hours, it's like, well, you said this is what you wanted to set it at. So you're approaching your own limits, so you got to deal with yourself here. Rather than like, Apple's just going to show you at the end of the week, like, hey, look what you did.
And one of the things on the awareness piece too, that really was an unlock for me, was understanding that like scrolling like actually changes your physiology like in your brain. Like there are chemical reactions going on as you're scrolling, and it has impacts to you after that you're scrolling. Like the same way that when you eat a cheeseburger, you feel lethargic and you feel slow and you feel like very, like not good at all. That's the same way when you're scrolling all day and then you don't feel motivation to do anything. Like if you start scrolling first thing in the morning and then you're like, oh, why can't I focus at work? Like it's because it's a literal chemical, like a scientist could predict it. Like what's going on in your brain.
Especially when it's like, they always say like the last 5 things you do before you go to sleep, or the first 5 things you do when you wake up, those are kind of going to determine like what happens in between.
Oh yeah.
And especially like I know that like the first thing in the morning, like don't go on your phone. You're going to either get stuck there, or the next thing you do is going to want to pull you back to going back to your phone. It's like you want to set the tone with these good habits, or at least just don't do the worst one. Like would you wake up and just start eating? I mean, maybe some people do.
But what's the first thing that everybody does in the morning? Pretty much right to the phone.
If you're doing this right now, stop. It's the single most poisonous thing that you can do. It really is the worst.
And it sounds like very unrelatable to me now, because I realized a while ago, like that's the thing that's messing me up. And now I sleep with the phone in a different room, and like I'm kind of
get
a monk
an
about
old-fashioned alarm clock.
Bro, I have the alarm clock that's just battery powered. It rings in the morning. Like I'm not dealing with any of that stuff. I got my watch on, the Apple Watch, but it's like other than that, there's no tech anywhere nearby. What's one of the things that you guys think people get wrong when they're trying to like reduce their screen time?
Well, I mean, we've kind of already talked about it, but like they try to use self-control. The biggest thing they get wrong is they think it's just a self-control issue, like it's a problem with me, but the big thing is that, it's like bringing a knife to a gunfight. If you're trying to reduce your screen time just by like deleting social media apps or like setting those time limits that you always just ignore, like they've hacked your psychology using powerful psychological techniques. You need to take that into account and understand like, okay, how do you actually build a habit in the first place, right? Like what are the things that I can do to set myself up for success? One of the big ones is not look at your phone first thing in the morning, right? So once you understand from a psychology perspective that like the first thing you feed your brain, that's what it's going to crave for the rest of the day, and like this has like a true impact on your neurology and physiology. Put your phone, don't sleep next to it, right? And so like, it's certain things like that, as well as getting like good screen time apps or turning off notifications or understanding like the certain things that they use to keep you engaged, making a plan using that.
What things do you think people could do practically, like with their time? Like, what are just some things if you could?
You mean with their time,
with their
like,
free time?
Yeah, the time that they've reclaimed.
Oh, man.
That is like probably the hardest question in all of this.
Whoa.
And easiest at the same time, but it's different for everybody. Like we were talking about before, it gets down to the core of who you are, what are your values in life? What do you want to make of your life? And, you know, what matters to you? And so, like, for me, I'm a musician. And I love playing music, playing guitar, writing songs, and I love reading and other things like that. But I think, like, you want to understand what gives you meaning in life and spend the short time that we have here doing things like that. So whether it's reading, you know, on the road, reading great books, and like whether it's philosophy or novels or whatever, or playing music or running outside or just being with friends, it's just like, think about what matters in life. Am I on my deathbed going to sit back and say, I wish I spent more time on TikTok? No. No. Whatever you're going to want to spend more time on your deathbed, do that.
And the thing is I think the first, like, it's a hard question to ask in terms of the exact thing that they should do, but I think the first thing that everyone should do is wander. Like, figure that out. Understand that, like, you're not, when you first reduce your screen time, break your addiction, like, it's going to be uncomfortable. Like, you're still going to be like, what do I do? I'm sitting here bored. Like, what are you doing today? Oh, I'm sitting inside bored sitting inside. Like,
it's good to be bored.
Yeah, it's good to be bored.
You need to be
Embrace
bored.
the uncomfortableness. Like, experience different things. Give it some time. Don't feel like you need to figure it all out. Like, when I developed a healthy relationship with my phone, like, I just wandered, honestly. We didn't start the company for like 8 months after that. Like, it was the unlock. Like, I started working out, I started cooking, I started reconnecting with friends. Like, I was figuring out what I wanted to do. Like, I was reading books, listening to podcasts, like talking to people, and just like understanding like what was important to me. So it's wandering at first.
Try to think about when you were phone addicted and you were doing the things that you love versus now. What was the difference in how you experienced that and how you felt?
I wasn't doing the things that I loved. I truly wasn't. And maybe I'm an extreme case in a lot of different ways. But I swear, man, like, everything has changed. Everything has changed. I used to be so anxious, self-conscious, constant anxiety. And obviously, like, it's not like it's a miracle pill and like everything is only roses. But no, low key, it is. Like, people think, like, I see people and I'm just like, dude, you could solve so many of your problems right now. But the keys don't have it. Obviously, you have to do the work after that. Again, it's not like it's the miracle pill and like you just do it and then life is easy. But everything's different for me. Like, it's tough to even explain. Like, I wake up energized, where before I woke up like afraid to take on the day. Like, oh, I have to get up.
Yeah.
You know, and I have to do this and I have to do that. And like, you know, life is just something to battle through. Where now it's something that I experience. And I understand the biggest thing is like I feel in control of my life. Like, I have agency, I would say. And I recognize that like life isn't some like thing to struggle against. Like, it just is. Like, we're all on this earth for like a short period of time. People will forget all of our names, even the greatest men and women that have ever existed. And we're just here to like live, exist, and like try to be the best version of ourselves to us that we can be. And that was something I just didn't understand at all.
Yeah.
You know? Some people are lucky they understand that early. It took me a while.
Yeah. And it can also be tough, like, when you don't have that and when you see other people, you know, doing big stuff, doing great things, and it's like, what the hell am I doing? It's like, well, you always have the present moment to just like take that over and just start it.
Exactly. And another thing is I was chasing like false idols. Like, I was making good money out of college. And I thought that was gonna make me happy. You know, and then I realized it didn't make me happy, and I think like the phone, like the addiction to my phone, like kept me in the rat race and thinking like it was almost like the same thing I was chasing. Like, I was like, this is gonna make me happy, or like going out on the weekend and getting blackout is gonna make me happy, and like partying and stuff. And it's the escapism, like, because they're all like, work is an escapism sometimes. Like, we work hard, but like it feels like it's our life mission when we do it. But so many people are conditioned to do that. And it's all related. Like, it's just was a big part of our transformation during this time.
In terms of the context switching, do you guys know about this? Like, how basically the phones take away like your attention. Like you literally have to pay attention to your phone to engage with it. But the fact that it takes away from like the real world, it happens like internally. Like your brain is like switching context constantly. And with TikTok, you know, like you're going from one video to the next, like that's one context switch. But something that I notice a lot with my friends who are still, for the most part, like phone addicted, like everyone's aware of it. But when some people are really down bad with it, they're kind of switching constantly, even if there's like nothing to do on the phone. It's like, well, they can't.
Open, close.
They're not
Different
even doing
apps.
anything.
Yeah.
They're doing like this obsessive cycle of just like, okay, real life, not as interesting. Phone, not as interesting. Real life, back to the phone. It totally disrupts like human connection and like simple conversations, to the point where it can be difficult to interact with people who are on like different levels of habits and awareness. How do you guys manage that? Especially when it comes to family. It's way more difficult with family to like show them the mirror of like how this works. How do you guys navigate that, just as like trying to show people you care about, here's what's happening and here's how our interactions are suffering?
It's interesting. I think, you know, there's two sides. I think a lot of people do get it. They get it, but not enough to really fully understand and then make that change. And I think, you know, I don't know, how do we convince people who are unconvinced? I'm not sure. I think mostly people understand, but they don't know the information about context switching. Like, for example, like on average, people check their phone every 4 minutes. And like when you check your phone and then you go back to your work and then you check it 4 minutes later and you go back to your work, maybe your screen time is only a couple hours, but really the like wasted time is the entire day, because you can never get into a groove. And so just talking about things like that, which is not like obvious, it's obvious that like, oh, maybe I'm spending too much time on my phone, but exactly like talking about this context switching concept, and that even if it was only 2 hours during the day, but you're checking it every other minute, that's the entire day wasted. And it's like little insights like that, I think, get people unlocking little nuggets of information in their brain to like change their perspective on the whole thing. I've found that most people aren't resistant to talking about tech addiction. They get it, and they want to change. They just don't know how.
Can I call someone out right now? Who do you think I'm going to call out?
Who?
Our mom. Oh, I do. Yeah, with my mom, you want to know what I do? Sorry, Mom. I've already called you out on TV once. I'm going to do it again. When she's on her phone, like too much, I take it and I put it in a different room. I'm like, Mom, I see you only every couple months. Like, this phone is going to be gone. And she like is okay with it, but she's definitely addicted, man. Like, it's not just a young people thing.
Yeah.
I think young people are particularly impacted in a way that older people don't understand, because they went through, you know, adolescence, childhood, you know, things like, they experienced life without. They learned how to self-regulate. They learned, like, they were able to do all the things that we're saying that people can't do, like understand themselves more, to a degree that you don't get when you're mindlessly scrolling. But they obviously are still as addicted. I think they're more well-adjusted. But yeah, my mom, like, I just take the phone and I just like, put that away.
Yeah.
You know?
Every time I'm with family, I'm always trying to find like little ways. I'm like, give me your phone. I'm gonna just like do all these little things on it, like the black and white screen.
Yeah.
I make sure to do that on people's phones. They're like, wait.
They probably hate you.
Oh, they're like, take this off. But then they're like, wait, how'd you do that again? Like, show me.
I think that's a disconnect for a lot of people. It's like they know there's a problem. They get it, but then there's a gap of like actually taking action and doing things. You know, actually putting your phone in another room for a few hours. That's like hard.
Oh yeah.
You know, like you feel naked without your phone.
Yeah.
And you know, not checking the phone. Like, it's so easy when you're working and you have that urge, oh, I'm bored.
Yeah.
Just check my phone real quick.
Yeah.
And it's hard to like ignore it like that. So I think that's the gap. It's like everyone knows it, but taking these steps and actually having the motivation to change your habits is difficult. And that's why we created our product, to help people, because you can't just do it alone. You can't just do it with self-control. You need tools that understand your psychology to fight back.
But the thing is too, like our product's great, it works wicked well, like people reduce their screen time a lot, but you still need to have motivation. You still need to like, it's not, like even with steroids, you need to hit the gym, you know? Like we are the steroids, but you won't just automatically get jacked, you know? You gotta still hit the gym. You know, I just came up with that analogy. I kind of like that, you know? Like,
even with steroids,
you gotta hit the gym. Like you just gotta like care.
Yeah.
Like downloading our app, if you don't care at all, like it's not gonna matter, you know? But yeah, it's just about caring about it and then understanding how can you enact changes in your life, small changes a lot of times, to make a big difference.
Yeah, it is like the roids for attention.
Yeah, it's the roids for getting done. Yeah, it's the roids for focus. Yeah,
It really is, man.
People will be like, look at your screen time. 1 hour? Is that natty? Yeah, you're on roids for that.
There's no way he's got just an hour off the self-control.
Without you must be using BePresent.
You using? What do you guys see next for the company? And do you also always like see yourself like in a space like this where you're kind of advocating for a positive cause?
Oh, 100%. We're just getting started, man.
Again, like we said, we really believe this is the defining problem of our generation, and it's going to take a long time for the tides to turn and to really help people and to kind of unlearn everything that we've, you know, been taught through this social media addiction over the last
We want to help
decade.
a billion people. I think this is a problem that impacts billions of people every single day and has massive, like, widespread economic and health consequences. I think in the future, everyone is going to need some type of solution to, like, help them help themselves. We want to help a billion people. So, like, you know, that's obviously the longer term vision. But yeah, we see ourselves in this for the long term.
And in the future, you know, your company is going to pay for you to have this type of tool because you know, they want you to be productive. And it's a win-win because you want to be productive too. And it affects the economy. It affects, you know, the entire...
Affects our society.
Yeah.
You know, affects everything. The government probably wants us, you know, in a way, like to all be healthy and actually have civil discussions instead of the stuff that's been going on recently. You know?
And we want to help change culture. And I think we're at the beginning of that. I think people are talking about this more and more in the last year than I've ever seen before, and we just want to be part of that growing awareness and this cultural desire to live in the real world and not be addicted and controlled essentially by our technology.
I will say, I feel like there has been a vibe shift recently. When we first started this, people kind of thought we were crazy. Like people had, like, when we talked to people, they wanted to solve the problem themselves, especially our age. But older people, investors, they thought we were crazy. Now it's like the space is actually, like, a lot of attention is on it right now. You know?
What were some of the doubts that you were hearing?
Oh,
no one would pay for this.
They didn't
like,
think
no
it was
one
a
really
problem.
Wants it.
They
It's
didn't
not
think
really
it was a problem. Yeah. Seriously, no, legit. And this was when we were ideating on it, like I would say like 2 years ago maybe, before we even really started the company. A lot has changed in those 2 years. I personally think, I mean, you saw like the Surgeon General coming out with like warning labels on social media, the anxious generation, you know, which
the #1 New York Times.
The anxious generation, if you don't know it, it's like proving that the mental health crisis was caused by social media, especially as adolescents. We were the first to really go through that. As kids, it's interesting reading it, being like, oh yeah, I remember that. I remember that.
You watched like the sunrise effect.
Yeah, legit. And I think the data is getting better, but honestly, like the most affected is they're just starting to mature.
Exactly.
You know, and they're starting to have voices.
Right.
And like telling their story instead of just like a high schooler kid. Like we always assume if like a kid is depressed or anxious or whatever, it's like the angsty phase of being a high schooler. But like when you get older and you're like, dude, something's wrong. And like I can tell it's my phone, because everyone like who grew up with this can just knows intuitively. So as this generation is getting older and older, even Gen Alpha, like when they that's gonna get a whole other.
Oh yeah.
The iPad babies.
The iPad babies. You know, I'm praying for them. But yeah, so I think a lot, like 2 years, a lot changed.
What is it that you think changed? Because in terms of like screen time and stuff, may have gone up within the last 2 years. it does seem like, there's been like a huge vibe shift, but what is it specifically?
I think it's the data becoming clearer and clearer because this is so new. Like 10 years, I mean, it might seem like a long time, but in terms of like actually understanding the impact of a generation over time, like you need a generation to go through something to really, from a scientific perspective, an academic perspective, to understand the impacts. So that is the first thing. And then the second thing is this generation they're now adults and able to start companies, able to have podcasts, able to like reach people and talk about their experience. Like we're now influencing culture. You weren't influencing culture before.
Yeah,
right.
And
it's art. Yeah, well, like, but like it
still
just,
posting memes.
But now that we're like mature, to a degree, but now that we're like members of society, like we can like tell our story and like what we think, and we can actually affect culture and the vibe.
Yeah.
And so I think it's those two things together. It's like the most affected generation maturing, and then it's the data becoming clear and almost inarguable. Like there's still people arguing it, but like we're not going to wait and sit around for like 100% proof.
I think it's so interesting that like this specific part of, because what year were you guys born?
97.
95.
Okay, so that, like Zillennials, that specific sliver is very often like the voice of reason with a lot of this tech stuff. Because we're the ones that got it first with no parents watching. It's like latchkey kids of social media.
Yeah.
And now that we're like members of society, it's like we're the only ones who are like super like aware of it in a way that like younger Gen Z, they're really addicted. Like they're really stuck, I've noticed for the most part. And then the older people are just kind of like pulled along too, and like I get this is a problem, but we also have like our own problems and all that stuff. So it's like it's really up to us to like make this very clear that we're the authorities on this. Like we're the guinea pigs of it. And so in terms of like problem solving, since we are like some of the authorities on this, do you think government intervention is one of the positive routes? Do you guys, like as a company, do you think that's something that you'd want to get into at some point, like getting into politics and working with politicians?
Truthfully, so listen, I'm not saying government regulation won't work. I am a little skeptical on it in the first place, and we're not really focused on that. Like we're personally focused on creating tools for people to help themselves, like
for the people.
Yeah, is government regulation good or bad? It has to be very specific on what the issue is. I'm personally not holding my breath for anything that will be long-term useful, because when you codify something into law, it probably takes so long, and then in the next couple of years, the law won't even be applicable because the technologies have all changed.
Plus, there's always loopholes.
Yeah.
And so my thought is, okay, so kids are totally different, right? I do think there needs to be more regulation with kids, or at least like parents regulating it or schools regulate whatever it is. But for adults, like gambling, I guess gambling's not legal in every state, but like
alcohol.
Alcohol. But like sports betting is now legal in most states. Like, you know, I just think I'm somewhat of we're focused on personal not necessarily just personal responsibility, but helping people help themselves and giving them the tools. So eventually, maybe we would work with politicians, run ourselves. But yeah, like it's just not something that I honestly feel like I can even speak to right now, you know?
Especially with like just the way things are generally.
Yeah, like, I mean, that being said though, I am encouraged by there's been some legislation that has gone out in the past year limiting the things that social media can do to minors. And, you know, Florida essentially banned social media for minors or people under 14 or 16. And New York has new regulations and for people under 18 about what types of algorithms that the app can serve you. And New York is going phone free in all their public schools as well, where, you know, when you go to school, you put your phone away.
See, that might be a good one.
Yeah.
But let me ask you this. I remember that when I was under 13, whenever you would go sign up for an account on something, it would say, are you 13?
I was born in 1985.
I was just like, you would change your age. So like all these bills, like I think it's incredible that people are trying to do something.
Exactly.
I don't mean to be a downer on it.
But that was my point. It's like, it's
awareness.
Encouraging to see. I see it more as a cultural movement rather than regulation is going to be the thing that actually solves it, because often that's not the case, and especially for stuff like this, it's very hard.
They can regulate things that they can tightly control or restrict, right? Like they can regulate alcohol because like it's a very like tight thing that they can actually put their footprint on. This, it's just going to be like so hard to do it because the point of sale is like a nebulous interconnection of computers, and they're not going to be able to always verify or really change these technologies. One, because they can't verify age, but also like they're going to adapt so quickly, you know, and like they're going to ban an addictive algorithm. But in the future, like, is the metaverse an algorithm? You know, like when we're living in the VR, like
these might be totally irrelevant.
And here's another thing. Whereas, like, you want to be careful because psychologically, for example, like if the parent is telling the child, "Hey, you need to get off your phone," the child now is gonna like want to be on their phone more. And when you start to try to limit something from people, there's going to be a backlash. So I think like you do want to be careful of that. Don't create a backlash of something that people essentially already agree with. They want to get off their phones. So
I want to talk about your guys' journey as entrepreneurs. And I think you're at the point now where you can share your story and like give advice in terms of like, if you want to do something like this, here's what you can do. Give us like a day-to-day or, you know, some of the most important things that you've gotten done to get to the point that you're at now.
The number one thing when we were starting out, and we've kind of already touched on this, was figuring out like what you actually want to do. Figure out if you actually want to be an entrepreneur in the first place. And if you do, like understand some of the limiting beliefs of why you aren't currently. You know, and this isn't applicable to everyone. Like everyone has a different journey, but for me, what was really holding me back was this limiting belief of not being able to do it. And then two, like going the traditional corporate route. You know, like I was kind of like ingrained in me, like you go to school, you get a good job, you climb the corporate ladder, then you retire. And like the first thing is like really examining some of these beliefs that you have, and do they make sense, or they've just been programmed in your head, right? And so that was like the first big step for me. The second biggest piece of advice is like do something that passion gets thrown around a lot, but and again, everyone's different, but I know I couldn't be like a B2B SaaS healthcare company with something that I never had any passion for or interest on. Like we're solving this problem because we love it and we believe that this is actually going to work, and we weren't just going to like try a million different types of things. Like we wanted to be authentic to ourselves, and we made the jump because we believe we had such high conviction, and we believe that we could like actually actualize it. So like I would say like for us that was like two of the biggest stuff. I don't know about you.
Yeah, another thing is you got to be okay with the low points. It's a roller coaster. It's not easy, and you don't want to expect it to be easy, and you can't expect it to be easy, and you know your path is not just going to be grow. Everything's going to keep going up. And so being able to remain steadfast through the down points, through the, you know, long days, problems that are really hard to solve, and just having faith in your mission and being able to like wake up every day and continue to work because you believe, you know, that this is going to work and you have to make it work. And so, you know, you have to be emotionally strong because it's unbelievable. It's so much fun, but it's also the hardest thing that I've ever done. Yeah, I think, you know, it's extremely hard. And so you kind of have to love the difficulty and love the struggle And I think that's the biggest thing for me.
And I have a point on that, but to get back to the jumping off point, like the advice on jumping off, like another thing that was really holding me back is this idea that it was risky, right? Like it was this huge risk. And then I heard this thing from Tim Ferriss. I think you're also a Tim Ferriss fan, great podcaster. He said, like, sometimes like we just have, these beliefs that things are risky, but if you think something's risky, write down literally the single worst outcome that could come from it, right? Yeah. And 9 out of 10 times,
that's not gonna happen.
No, even if that happens, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Like literally, the riskiest thing is like, we spent 2 years like not making as much money as we could at a big tech company, and then we just go get jobs. And like literally, I wrote that down, and I was like, wait, this isn't risky at all. What is the bigger risk? That, or at 80 years old, being like, I could have been something great, and instead I spent my entire life, my entire career, doing something that I hated. Which one is the bigger risk? It was clear to me at that point. So I would say, I forget what episode Tim talks about. He's probably talked about this a lot. And I think he might have had like a different protocol on it, but it was basically like visualize the single worst thing that could happen from this scenario. And it really, like, even if it happens, most times you're like, oh, actually it's not that bad. Like it's worth it,
It's risky to not be taking risks.
The biggest risk is not taking one,
Because you have, for anything, for you to get anything that you really want, you have to take a risk.
And like I said, like not taking action is also risk. Like you have to think about that too.
Yeah.
And then to the point about when you're actually an entrepreneur and just starting out, the thing is you have to love problems. You have to love like it being hard and it sucking, because that's where the value is. Like if it was easy, like whatever you're doing, it would already exist. So
it wouldn't be worthwhile.
Yeah, it wouldn't be worthwhile at all. Everything worthwhile in life is hard.
Yeah. Who are some of the other figures that you guys either look up to or that really influence like some of your work?
I mean, we love Elon,
Yeah.
And if you look at someone who does hard things and loves problems and loves the struggle and doesn't have any limiting beliefs, it's him. And look at SpaceX. Like, is that a crazy thing to just say, I got my PayPal check? He could have just like, sat on his money and whatever, but he's like, no, I'll start a rocket company.
And take on like 7 different companies.
Yeah, exactly. There's Tesla, you bought Twitter, and you're like, yeah, sure, controversial person, like, you can have whatever opinion you want of him, but, and I love him, but as an entrepreneur, like no one has accomplished what he's accomplished, and like, just like using that as inspiration, and really, so many people told him that he could never do all of the things that he was doing, that he's done. So he's a big inspiration for sure.
It's so cool to have like an extreme. I always think about this. Like there's people who are just like, how the hell is that even possible?
Dude, they're built different. They're just built different.
And it's cool to have like, okay, I don't necessarily have to aim for that, but I'm going to aim somewhere nearby.
Yeah.
So that even if I don't end up becoming Elon Musk, like if I'm anywhere near, I've made something of myself. What do you guys think in terms of like, so in terms of Elon Musk, like the PayPal mafia, you know about that?
Yeah, of course.
So I think that's so cool. And it's like kind of in line with the company. It's like, well, these guys were friends and spent a lot of time together talking, like being together, sharing ideas. And that's how you make stuff happen. Like that's a huge selling point right there. It's like being present with other people is how you do anything. Like, you can be an entrepreneur and like do all this stuff on your own, but the collaboration with others is where the true magic happens. And then that example, like the PayPal mafia, it's like, yo, these guys aren't just entrepreneurs anymore. Like they're founders, they're big CEOs, like Silicon Valley dudes. Like now they're like running the world.
Yeah.
So it's like,
low-key.
And they're fighting with each other too.
Yo, that's what happens when you're like a titan, Like you're getting so much done that you run into the others who are, getting real stuff done. Maybe it's gonna happen with us, like at the end of years. Hey, remember that podcast where it all started? But I think that's what the main selling point, that at least to my friends, is like, it matters for us to be present with each other. Yeah, it's like we're friends and we love each other, but it's like, yo, we're trying to get stuff done in life. and this is how you do it. Like, it can't just
No
be like,
one can do it alone. Not even Elon. You know what I mean? Like 7,000 people work at Tesla.
Yeah.
We're animals at the end of the day, and we're social creatures, and we do things together. Like, it's funny. You think about like what it takes to make anything. Like, not a single person can make a water bottle right now, or like paper, or like any of this.
how much can you do truly on your
Nothing.
own?
Nothing.
Yeah. I
I
think
think
we need
that's-
each other.
Exactly. We need each other, and we need to like show each other like each other's value. I always talk about this with my friends. I'm like, there was a meme in like 2015. It was like, yo, one day we're gonna have Lambos with mansions and this and that. It's like trying to hop on Fortnite, and it's like, yo, you can't get stuff done just like talking about it. Like, you gotta be about it. You gotta be with each other.
You got to be about it. At the very least, people doing things together inspire you, and at the very most, it's ride or die. This is my brother. We're doing everything together, and you just need people. I 100% agree.
And that's the biggest calling card for being present. I thank you guys for coming on and
Thanks for the
sharing
platform,
your
man. This
wisdom.
is awesome.
So tough, bro. I think this is going to impact people in such a profound way.